Hey, what's up guys, it's Texamer talking to you here. Yes, this is my new series on the channel and it's called iPhone's Past. This is the first episode where I will look at older iPhones and see, are they worth it to use? Are they obsolete, completely obsolete? What were their impacts on our society? What were their impacts on future iPhones and how they work in 2022 or 2023, depends on the year. I will try to make an episode at least once per 2 weeks or once per week. I'm not sure yet. I will take a look further down the line. But this is the first episode, and as you saw in the title and thumbnail, my iPhone 5 will be the showdown of today's episode. Yes, the first episode will focus on the iPhone 5, not the iPhone 2G. I will not do it by order. So today I will start with the 10-year-old iPhone 5, released after Steve Jobs died. It has been 10 years since the iPhone 5 was launched. This iPhone 5 is special for me. It was the first iPhone released after Steve Jobs died. So it was launched around a lot of sadness and a lot of bad sentiments from the Apple company itself and its fans. So yes, it was a very special phone, a very sentimental phone, but it was also the first big screen iPhone. Yes, the iPhone 5 was the first jump in display size for Apple, for iPhone in terms of size, because the iPhone 3G, 2G, 4, 4S, they were all a 3.5-inch display, while this iPhone 5 used the 4-inch display. This iPhone display is still small by today's standards, but I do believe that this iPhone 5 was a move forward, so huge and so enormous that defined every single iPhone after it. Mainly the iPhone 12s and 13s, which design bases on the iPhone 5's design. Many argue between the iPhone 5's industrial design and the iPhone 4 design to be the best design ever on an iPhone. For me, I do still prefer the iPhone 4's design, but I'm a little bit biased because I never owned an iPhone 5. I only owned the iPhone 4, and it was my first iPhone, and I loved that design. The iPhone 5 has a special place in my heart. Of course, I never owned the iPhone 5, but I did own the iPhone 5S, not this gold color. I owned the silver, or I think it was a space gray. Yes, it was a space gray color, but I love the iPhone 5S. It was my real first good iPhone, and when I first owned it, the iPhone 6S was already out, but the Touch ID made such a difference in my life that I was marked by this iPhone. Maybe the biggest upgrade in terms of iPhones, not talking about the iPhone 13 Pro Max, of course. But let's focus on this iPhone 5 that I have here, and let's see if in 10 years later, is it still usable? Is it still a very bad time to use it, or is it completely obsolete? Of course, by just looking at it, you can see that it's completely destroyed, but this is the space gray or midnight gray that Apple firstly introduced with the iPhone 5 and the iPad mini. I have this color in actually two devices, which is my iPad mini, the old one generation, the second generation I think, and this iPhone 5. You can see here that it's completely destroyed. I will show you in some b-roll. This iPhone suffers from a lot of trouble and a lot of problems that this paint job did have, which is these spots on the paint. So I mean, it was cool design, it was a very cool color, maybe the third best color ever on an iPhone. My first two are the jet black iPhone being the first, and of course midnight green from the 11 Pro being the second. But this third color, it's just incredible. This is one of the best Apple colors ever, and one of my favorite, not the favorite space gray color that Apple has ever did. My favorite black color, like I told you, is jet black. That phone was so beautiful. I loved it. I held it in my hand several times. I used it several times. I never owned one, and now they are pretty expensive if you want to buy one, or if it's not expensive, it is in very bad shape. So of course, this iPhone 5 has a very special place in my heart. It runs iOS 10, like you can see here, and I mean, it's iOS 10, it's still pretty usable, but after all these years, 10 years later, this iPhone now doesn't receive any software upgrades, while the iPhone 5 actually stopped receiving upgrades on iOS 12. So it has a lot of longevity when compared to the iPhone 5. 2 upgrades for 1 year of difference. So yeah, the iPhone 5S was a huge jump from the iPhone 5. But I mean, today's video is not about the iPhone 5S, so let's go back to the iPhone 5, shall we? So the iPhone 5 was an incredible phone, and like I told you, it came after the Steve Jobs died. And so in this video, I will dive deep, because in 2022, 10 years has passed since Steve Jobs has died, and since Apple released the iPhone 5. So yeah, no further ado, let's get started. So the iPhone 5 was released in 2012, the year that Steve Jobs died. Yes, it was a very sad time at Apple because Steve Jobs, their creator and founder and savior, just died from pancreatic cancer. So it was a very sad time for Apple. There were a cool speech from Tim Cook, and Tim Cook has just taken the rights at Apple. And so the 5 iPhone, or the 5th iPhone, the iPhone 5, was kind of unexpected because it was the first iPhone to make a jump in screen size. It went from 3.5 to 4-inch screen, and so this was the first time that we saw a bigger sized iPhone with a bigger screen. The iPhone 5 also came with aluminum, which is a contrast to the iPhone 4. I have here an iPhone 4, and as you can see, this iPhone 4 was the design that is my favorite in my opinion, because the iPhone 4, it has a glass back, it has stainless steel sides, and it's smaller. It has a 3.5-inch display, like I told you, but it feels hefty because it has glass and has stainless steel. It feels very premium. This iPhone was such a fantastic iPhone. It's still one of my favorite iPhones ever. The only problem that I saw with this iPhone, not talking about the antenna gate, of course, it's the buttons. The buttons nowadays, they don't work that well, but it has the iOS 7 and it runs very well. This is one of my favorite, not my favorite iPhone ever, and I love it so much. This is my first iPhone in my collection. It was my first iPhone, this iPhone here that you can see. So I'm very happy that I have one. Very happy. This has a 3.5-inch screen, and I will of course do an episode focus on this iPhone 4. If you want more, let me know in the comments down below if you want to be the next iPhone, the iPhone 4, because the rumors are talking about the fact that the iPhone 14 will be based on this design. And so I will do an episode of the iPhone's past, of the iPhone 4 next. So, of course, let me know in the comments down below if you are excited for that. But in today's episode, like I told you, I'm going to focus on the iPhone 5. And the iPhone 5 came with a big change. It dropped the glass and stainless steel construction for aluminum construction. It's lighter, but it's also not as durable, because as you can see here, this phone is not in a good of a shape, while the iPhone 4 that I showed you still looks pretty good. So, of course, this iPhone is still very dinged up. It has a lot of scratches. It could bend very easily. Not talking about the iPhone 6 easily, but it still bent like pretty easily. It only had glass on the top and sides for the antennas, and so this iPhone worked pretty well. But this design was less premium in my opinion, but it felt different. It was way lighter, so it was very easy to hold. It was less wide, but it was taller. So people were joking that the next iPhone will be even taller. But no, this kept the 4-inch display for one more year with the iPhone 5s, and then went for the iPhone 6, which was a wider and taller aspect ratio. Of course, it was a 16:9. But this iPhone is still very cool, still very incredible. I love this iPhone so much, and it works very well. Also came with double the RAM, which was 1 gig, and it also came with a new processor, the A5. The A5 was the second generation of Apple Silicon ever, and the A5 present on this iPhone is 2 times faster than the A4, the first Apple Silicon chip present on the iPhone 4 and iPad 1, first generation. Of course, this A2, like not the A2 but the A5, because it came on the iPhone 5, was fast. It ran at 2.4 gigahertz. It was double the performance of the iPhone 4s. So, of course, this iPhone was faster, better RAM, and of course introduced a new camera, which was the iSight camera. It had this camera with 8 megapixels and the first camera ever on an iPhone with a 2.4 aperture. So the shots were not that bad from that time. Of course, if you compare to the shots of today and you take 2 pictures with this iPhone, the iPhone 13 Pro Max and the iPhone 5, then you will notice a huge jump between these iPhones. Of course, in good lighting. This is a studio lighting situation, so imagine if you were shooting this picture outside. I don't have this chance right now to show you, but imagine, just imagine. So again, the iPhone 5 came with a lot of improvements over the iPhone 4s, which in my opinion was an amazing phone too. So the iPhone 5 surprised a lot of people bought it. It was one of the best selling iPhones ever, and now 10 years later, it's not a lot of common to see people using the iPhone 5. I mean, I think that I see a lot of people using the iPhone 5s, those phones are still pretty common, and I still see a lot of iPhone SEs, which were the last generation from this design trend. Of course, the iPhone 5 was the first, and although a lot of people bought it, a lot of people used it, I never saw a good iPhone 5 in terms of conditioning, in terms of design, in terms of aspect. It was always very roughed out, very destroyed, like this iPhone is. And so one thing that we have to take out from this phone is durability. 10 years has passed, and I mean, it looks 10 years old. But in terms of design feel, it feels very premium in the hand. The design still feels incredible, very intemporal, and it was the only iPhone with a bigger screen than 3.5 inch to have that squared on button, this one here, before the iPhone 5F introduced, of course, Touch ID. It was the last phone not to have Touch ID, and it was the first phone to be released after Steve Jobs died. So it was a very symbolic phone to be released, and 10 years later, I gotta tell you, is it obsolete or not? Yes, of course, it is obsolete. But what impact has it created on several iPhones to come after it? Yeah, first, the iPhone 5S, which was the iPhone followed by the iPhone 5, was an incredible phone. It was my second iPhone ever, like I showed you before. The iPhone 5S, like a heavier, introduces Touch ID. Touch ID on this phone is very impressive. It was the first generation one, so it was pretty slow. Like the haptic motor vibrates when it goes wrong. Let's see if I can lock it using Touch ID. Nope, I don't have it set up. But the Touch ID was incredible. This phone is way faster than the iPhone 5. It runs iOS 12, so it's pretty usable today, and it still has the same design. If you compare them both, like, you probably can see that they look very similar, although the flash is different and the camera here is also way better. This is also the first 64-bit chip, the A7, and so it works pretty cool. It still features Lightning. Oh, Lightning, of course, how could I forget? The iPhone 5 was the first iPhone to introduce Lightning. Yes, Lightning is 10 years old, guys. So, we still have Lightning on our newest iPhone, the iPhone 13 Pro Max, and so that's why I want Apple to introduce us USB-C or go all in on MagSafe. So, of course, the iPhone 5 was the first iPhone to introduce the Lightning port. At the time, a lot of people were hurt when Apple dropped the 32-pin connector, but now we have Lightning, which was an incredible port at the time, and it worked pretty well. This iPhone 5 also introduced for the first time this two-tone layer. For example, it has glass and aluminum that we will see until the iPhone 5S and even the first generation of the iPhone SE. Of course, this iPhone 5 was pretty cool and pretty good. Oh, also, it was the first iPhone to put the headphone jack at the bottom. Why Apple did put the headphone jack on the top with the iPhone 4 and beyond, I don't know why, but the iPhone 5 was the first one to truly know where to put the headphone jack, although Apple will remove it on the iPhone 7. But its impact on all of our phones in today are pretty cool and pretty huge. Lightning port, headphone jack at the bottom, now is removed, but all of stuff like the design trend that we see now with the iPhone 12 and 13s was inspired by the iPhone 5, and of course all of the other stuff that came with the iPhone 5. For example, the biggest screen. The biggest screen was the first iteration of the iPhone 5, the first ever that Apple introduced the bigger screen iPhone, and even ever since then, the iPhones have been getting bigger and bigger, and now we have a 6.7-inch display on the iPhone 13 Pro Max, which is huge, completely huge. But like I was telling you, this iPhone 5 had a lot of impact in other phones, since the iPhone 5S to the iPhone 5C also was a new branded iPhone 5 with plastic. I have one here also, so let me get one. Here we go. This is the iPhone 5C. I can do a video on this one because this is a very iconic phone. I have this iconic case, which is also pretty cool. And let me take it out to show you. This is the white iPhone 5C. And the iPhone 5C, like you can see here, it's an iPhone where it was made of a plastic. My mom used this phone and it was her phone. So it came in 2013 together with the iPhone 5S. Those two were the phones that Apple launched. This is the first attempt from Apple to make a cheaper iPhone. It was way cheaper at the time, I think $200 cheaper than the iPhone 5S, and it came only with 8 gigabytes, which was not that interesting. The iPhone 5 was the first phone to introduce a 64 option. So of course the iPhone 5C was an iPhone 5 rebranded, so you can see why a lot of people prefer to use the iPhone 5, because the aluminum design is way better than the plastic one. But that's why I think that the iPhone 5C failed and the iPhone 5 was a good phone, but the best one was the iPhone 5S. If I had to put this in a tier list, I would say this is a totally F phone, but I will do iPhone's past on the iPhone 5C and how it impacted the Apple lineup, because it has still a pretty big impact on the Apple's lineup with the iPhone XR, with the iPhone 11, and now the iPhone 12 and 13, suffering a lot of the same formula from the iPhone S5C and even the iPhone SE. So you can see that Apple attempted for the first time to create a cheaper iPhone, and they did it by using plastic and less quality materials, but then later they will realize that this is not a good strategy, and they will put very premium designs, but older type of designs with good hardware. So again, iPhone SE was an iconic phone, but not more than an iPhone 5 rebranded next year. So again, you can see that the iPhone 5 lived through the ages with a lot of impact through, with of course the iPhone 12s and 13s being inspired on the iPhone 5's design. It was the pinnacle of Johnny Ive design. You can see that it's very beautiful, very industrial type crafted design, very all of these aluminum surgically cut and chamfered, so it's pretty beautiful to look at, even if it's new or not. This color is incredible, one of my favorite colors ever, the third one, and the space gray is so beautiful. I then had the iPhone 5S with the space gray. It was a little bit lighter on the color, and I was not much of a fan of that one, although it looked pretty cool at the time. I got bored of it pretty quickly, while this color still looks incredible to me. But now you are probably thinking, is the iPhone 5 obsolete in 2022? And let me tell you, well, of course it is. It runs iOS 10. iOS 10 is pretty bad. You cannot download a ton of apps. Like if I go to the App Store here, I mean, if this phone lets me, this phone, it's very buggy, very buggy. You cannot download a ton of apps, although some of them are available with older versions. It's not as easy to get, and they were not as supported as they should be, not as secure. I can still download Antutu benchmark, and let's try to run a benchmark here to see how much do we get while I talk. And this screen is not that great. It has like a halo effect, so it's probably burning on an LCD. I don't know, it looks like burning, but I don't know what it is. So let's test again, and let's leave it right here and talk about a little bit more about this iPhone 5 and how it impacted through the ages. But like I was telling you, this iPhone 5 was a very special phone. It influenced the iPhone 5S, this incredible phone here, and it was very beautiful. The iPhone 5S, this is the gold phone, and it was the first time that Apple introduced gold on an iPhone, and it looks pretty beautiful. It's white bezels also. So I will do also iPhone's past on the iPhone 5S if you want to, but the iPhone 5 had the iPhone A5 chip. This one has the A6, but this one get the iOS 12, which is pretty usable in 2022, while the iPhone 5 only got the iOS 10, which is in 2022, it's pretty much obsolete. So even though the score that we will get here will be more or less bad, because I'm expecting it to be bad, this phone is still pretty obsolete, and the GPU is not that good. You cannot play a lot of games here, probably Angry Birds, it's only a game you can play, Candy Crush if it's available. But then again, this phone in 2022 who uses an iPhone 5 is cheap, but you should not get the iPhone 5 to use in 2022. You should get like an iPhone 8 used for less than $100. Maybe try to find an 8 Plus for $100, or forget the iPhone 12, get the iPhone 13, a newer type of phone, spend a little bit more. Do not try to cheap out and then you have to buy a phone next year again. So like I recommend you, go for the iPhone 5. I think it got stuck, so you cannot run the Antutu benchmark pretty well. It's stuck on 54% for a while now. And of course, this phone is not a powerhouse, like I was telling you. It's not that great. Another thing that it suffered, it was the lamination of the screen. Mine has a little bit of it. I will try to show you here. This has a lot of delamination on this screen. I don't know what caused it, but my iPhone 5S originally, the screen peeled off completely. I used my phone while the screen was dangling. It was very bad. The glue completely went off, and then I had to send it to Apple so they could glue the screen together with the iPhone. So it was stupid. But again, was not the first time. And of course, you can see that if I press it down on this phone, you can see that the screen goes down, which is a sign that the glue is also turning old and completely destroyed. Of course, this iPhone 5 nowadays is not usable, it's obsolete, and it doesn't have any support from Apple. But it's very beautiful to look at, and it's a piece of history of the iPhone's past. And that's why I think that it's very interesting to look at, very interesting to recap and to talk about and do a mini series on it. Of course, this iPhone 5 is very cheap. You can pick one up now for $30, $40. I got this one for free from my cousin. Thank you, Pedro, for that. But of course, this iPhone is pretty cool, very beautiful, and it has been a lot of use. I think it's third hand right now. I think 3-4 people have used it. So it's an incredible phone. iOS 10, although it's not usable in 2022. I mean, it's a piece of a collection. It's a piece of the iPhone's past. And if you guys like this video and you guys like this series, don't forget to drop a like down below and to subscribe to my channel. Don't forget to subscribe to keep up with my videos. And if you are liking this iPhone's past and if you like this first episode, don't forget to subscribe to keep up with this mini series. I will have a playlist with all of the episodes down below. And please support the channel, leave a like and comment down below which were your favorite iPhone ever and which iPhone would you like to see next on iPhone's past. Of course, iPhone's past, this was the first episode 10 years later from a memory which was the iPhone 5 and the memory that was Steve Jobs. But of course, this is the iPhone 5 in 2022, very obsolete part of the iPhone's past, and so that's why I did a video today to try to recap how good it was, what impact it had, and of course all of the things that I talked about in this video. This is Texmer talking to you here. Bye.